Hi everyone, today I want to show you something about HiFiMan's own all-in-one units. So I have with me here the EF500 and also the EF499, and down here you see the EF400. So all of these are all-in-one units, so you can easily drive your headphones with just this little thing here. And two of these also have a streamer function, so in case you are wanting something like that. So first, let's talk about what do they actually cost. So since they have a DAC and amp function in there, and also some of them have a streamer, they are quite affordably priced, I would say. The most affordable one is actually the EF499. It costs $299. Then the EF500 goes for $459, and the EF400 you see down here is actually costing MSRP $599, but since it's a little bit older than the other two, they mostly go for an offer for $399. So yeah, keep that in mind. So they all use air-to-air DAC chips. The biggest difference here to note is that the EF499 actually uses an air-to-air chip from Philips, while the EF500 and the EF400 use HiFiMan's own Himalaya chips. As I said earlier, there is the option to use two of the devices LAN-based. So a LAN-based streamer function is included in the EF499 and the EF500. So the EF400 sadly does not have one. In case you want to have that, I would suggest look at the other two. So in regards to connectivity, the EF499 and the EF500 are quite alike. I mean, they also look quite alike, and as you can see here, the only difference you can spot is that here is a silver metallic touch to it, while this is black and has a little bit of a glossy acrylic touch to it, I would say. So you have a kind of connectivity here, 4-pin XLR balanced headphone output, a 6.3mm single-ended headphone output, while also having a 4-level function switch from low to high gain, with each having an oversample and non-oversampling mode. So if you turn the switch here, a little lamp will light up in which mode you are. So at the back side, you have also the same outputs for the EF500 than for the 499. They have an XLR balanced outputs, RCR single-ended, as well as network connector, as you can see here, and also a coaxial input, and as well as an coaxial USB function switch. So as you can see here, you can use a little switch to switch between the modes. And you also have USB-C input and USB-B input. So the EF400 is a little bit different in this regard, but it also has the XLR headphone output here, and also has the 6.3mm headphone output as well, while also providing here a 3.5mm connection and a 4.4mm output for your headphones. So this one has a little bit more possibilities to plug in your headphones. The switch between high and low gain and also oversampling mode is this time also like this big little wheel here that's having a little bit of a clicking function to it. But otherwise, it is a quite nice unit. If you look at the back side, you have the, of course, XLR and the RCR and USB-C, and while also having USB-B. So no streamer function here this time at the EF400. So maybe also something that could be important to already owners of the EF400 is that HiFiMan itself does offer an upgrade plan for the EF400. So you can actually ship the unit to HiFiMan itself, and they replace the DAC chip in here to the Himalaya Pro 2 chip. So that's the chip that's already used in the HiFiMan Serenade, so a higher priced DAC amp device that HiFiMan also sells. I think it is pretty cool that they offer that. So yeah, it's not quite cheap to do, but I like the option that you can actually upgrade your device if you want to. So this saves a little bit of e-waste. I like that approach, and I wanted to note that here in case you're interested in it. Maybe another thing that could be maybe potentially nice to use is that the EF499 and the EF500 have this little socket where it can just stand like this, so you can actually put your headphones over the sides here if you want to. I found it to be quite useful for that. So while testing the three devices, I found them to be quite powerful, so they can drive most planar magnetic headphones pretty well. But something to be aware of here though is that you should aim for using mostly the balanced connection, because the unbalanced connection does sound a little bit less refined and is also having a little bit different power output. So if you compare, for example, the EF500, it can output 4.5 watts per channel and 32 ohms in a balanced connection. And if you compare this to the unbalanced connection, it's just 1.3 watts per channel. So this is a big difference, I would say. The same goes actually to the EF400, 4.4 watts per channel. The EF499 has 4.3 watts per channel in 32 ohms balanced connection, while just having 1.3 watts per unbalanced connection. So it is a quite big difference. And if you compare with just pure output power, the winner here is the EF500, followed by the EF400 and then the EF499. So in general, you can say that they all perform better with the balanced connections. So I would say to rather stay away from the single-ended outputs and go directly to the balanced, since they perform better like this. Also, while having these three run for quite some time, they rather stay cool to the touch. So nothing like, for example, a Class A amplifier that tends to be running very hot and it's maybe sometimes even unpleasant to touch. This was not the case here. They really stayed cool to the touch while running. So let's come to the sonic performances between the three devices. I have to say at this point now that they are very close together. So there's not that big difference between these. So keep that in mind. What I point out here are just subtle differences between these. And yeah, the EF500, for example, is a little bit more neutral tuned, while the EF499 and the EF400 are a little bit more of a warmish touch to it. They're still neutral, but in comparison, they have a little bit of a tendency to be a little bit more rich and full sounding. But I would not call any of these devices to be a very warm sounding unit, so this is not the case. All three devices here have a little bit more of a relaxing side to them. They are not trying to offend anyone, and I found them to go pretty good with HiFiMan headphones, because sometimes HiFiMan headphones could be a little bit too bright, too sparkly at the top end, and so all three devices have a little bit of a smoother treble, a little bit of a treble roll-off. So I found them, for example, to be very good with the Aria Stealth, for example. They were a great match to the EF500 and the EF400. Generally speaking, in comparison, the EF499 here is sonically a little bit weaker than the other two, but mostly you could feel the difference that it tends to be a little bit more sharp and sizzly at the top end, very slightly, and also has a little bit less impactful bass response, but for example, in the song Ava Max, that sometimes tends to be a little bit more bright and sibilant and sharp. There was really pleasant to use the EF500 or 400. It also improved the song here with the EF499 in comparison, for example, to something like the EF V2 I had here. It was for sure more pleasant to listen to that song with the EF499 and also the EF500 and EF400. So all three amplifiers were a really good match to HiFiMan's own lineup of headphones. But they also worked pretty good with, for example, Mies audio headphones. I found them to be quite pleasant. If I compare this now, for example, the EF500 with something much more expensive like the Burson Conductor GT4 Max I have here that costs around, I think, 3,000 to 4,000 euros currently, I have to say this device here was not far off. And sometimes I even preferred this one here against the Burson Conductor GT4. Why would I say that? Because I did the test, for example, with the HE1000 Stealth at that time, and I found the treble roll-off to be quite pleasant for them as well. The Burson one actually is a little bit too bright for HiFiMan headphones sometimes. So also maybe something to note here is there is a very bit of channel imbalance. If you turn the volume knob here, for example, to the 1 or 2 direction like this, around this direction here, there is a little bit of channel imbalance in every of the three devices. But most of the time it was not really an issue because at that point the volume was so low that I wouldn't want to listen at that volume. But I wanted to note that here that there is slightly channel imbalance from going around 1 to maybe 4 volume knob direction. So I also tested IEMs with all 3 devices. It worked pretty good. So I tested the Mies Alba, for example. There was a slight noise floor, so a little bit of a hum, but it was not loud and it didn't bother me really. So I found them to be usable with IEMs. So they all have a high and low gain and oversampling and non-oversampling mode. I mostly just used the low gain because it was really enough to drive most of my headphones here. And also most of the time I used oversampling mode. There were just really slight differences between non-oversampling and oversampling mode. I, for example, like the EF500 and the EF499 better with oversampling mode, the EF400 a little bit better with no oversampling mode, but really the changes are not that big. So yeah. So let's come to a conclusion now. I would say all 3 devices are reasonably priced. I found the EF499 to be a great starting point. That also has a LAN-based streamer function. The EF400 and the EF500 are just slightly performing better. If you don't need a streaming function, then yes, the EF400 is a great unit if you can find it in offer. If you want a streaming function, then here, yes, the EF500 is the way to go. But if you're on a tighter budget, for example, you really don't want to spend that much, it is fine. Don't worry too much about it because the EF499 is quite capable and it's not really far off the other 2, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. And yeah, with this now we are quite done with the short comparison. I hope you've liked it, and if you did, please consider hitting the like and subscribe button to support me a bit, and I hope to see you again next time. Ciao, ciao!